Good morning. It's August 19th, 2022. It's a Friday, and welcome to what will be the final episode of Triggered. I'm Cory Morgan. So this, I guess I say it in past tense, was the Western Standards Daily Live Show. There's going to be other stuff coming, guys. There's going to be live things. I'm not vanishing either. But this had been running from 11:30 until 1. It had my daily views, rants, interaction with you guys in the comments scroll, which I really do enjoy. That's one of the things I am going to miss with this show is ranting at you guys or still just seeing some of the discussion and new ideas coming up that I hadn't thought of. That's what live and interactive is so good. Unfortunately, it's very wearing as well. I'll expand a little bit and that in a little bit here as people get on. So let's look at a couple observances before we move along, though, guys. It is National Hot and Spicy Food Day. This is a good one. And I love the hot and spicy foods. That's one of the disputes we unfortunately have in my household. Got a fantastic wife and living quite well, but we differ. She's Dutch and she just likes that not flavorless, but she's not big on spicy foods. Me, oh man, the spicier the better. Either way, today, I mean, there's so many great spices, flavorful foods out there. Today's the day you're supposed to celebrate that. Get those down. Buy that 2-ply toilet paper. Make sure to schedule yourself a good bath for tomorrow. Maybe even a little ice cube somewhere if you really have to. But indulge, take it down, and make the most of those spicy foods. There's so many great ones. It's always been my thing, thinking the better foods. I mean, I got to admit, when it comes to northern and southern, hot areas make better food. The farther north you get, the more bland you get. I think Dave got upset when I talked about that once before, but it's true, I mean, do you see many, like Dave's been going on about Finland lately on how there is a very appetizing prime minister or president or whatever it is for that country there. But if the food, then when I was in Finland, the only thing we ate was McDonald's. I mean, northern places, there's nothing good there. Likewise, get down south, Italy, North Africa, India. Oh, great foods. Either way, get those spicy foods in today, guys. It's also National Men's Grooming Day. In celebration of that, I did some extra manscaping this morning. Everything's a lot more tidied up than it typically is. You won't be able to see that, but the world's a safer place due to it, and I'm probably going to need to get the drain snaked at home. So today, guys, you see, this is the way. It's a nice thing of being a guy. We only got to worry about this once a year, apparently. We only have one annual grooming day, and you can just kind of let go for the other 364. We're not held to the same standard, and there is a double standard out there. We've been watching that, actually, as we watch CTV imploding. Over the fact that Lisa LaFlamme apparently let herself go gray. And that's unacceptable for a woman. For men, they can go gray and age out on national networks, until they're in their 70s. But for women, apparently you go gray and you're on the way out the door. I'm just happy, not for Lisa LaFlamme or some of that attitude. We're seeing the old legacy media dinosaurs dying, and they're killing themselves with every little action they do. And we're filling the void with alternative media. So keep up the good work, guys. Carry on. Smart thinking. CTV is really clearly rising in the ratings and national respect these days. So let's see. I got a couple of good guests on today. Edmonton City Centre prospective Liberal candidate Zach Abdi. I could be mispronouncing his name. This was kind of cool. I was just kind of going on a bit about the Liberal Party. They've had troubles. They weren't able to find a leader by deadline. And I went on a bit of a rant on my show about it the other day. And I talked a bit about Lawrence Decor, who led them back in the 90s and how they've been doing well and how the party has a long history and it's gone down. Well, Zach did a TikTok video kind of in response to me. He differed with a couple of things on it, but it was very positive and upbeat. And I just thought that's kind of cool. Like I saw it when I was going through the Twitter scroll. What's this? Somebody, talking about my rant. So I thought I'd bring him on and we'll talk a little bit about the Liberal Party because it's seeing somebody who's optimistic and enthusiastic about a party that's in such a tough way. And, it'll be an interesting discussion. I know there's not a heck of a lot of Liberal supporters among our audience. I'm not a big Liberal supporter myself, but I still like seeing people with that kind of attitude and optimism going into politics. I was just really kind of impressed with it. So I think it'll be a fun conversation. Again, even if we come away with it from it not changing any voter views, who knows? Then we're going to have the Western Standards, Chris Oldcorn on. He's our Saskatchewan guy, and he writes columns as well. We'll just review what's going on in Saskatchewan, what he's been writing about, what his opinion stuff's been about. And of course, I will cover news and other things as we go through the day. So just that reminder to everybody, it's, Jet Gorgon saying, in the tropics they use spicy so you can't taste or smell the rot. There's some truth to that. And you know what? I think there's a bit of a preservative quality with the spicy stuff too. But I mean, look at what they eat in Iceland. They got that fermented shark that you can smell from 6 miles away. They've just accepted that they're going to eat foul, rotten stuff rather than trying to mask it or make it taste better. So now again, I'll go with the spicy stuff. I quite enjoy it. And let's see. So lots of folks saying they're regretting the show's coming to an end, and so am I. I mean, I'm not leaving in a rage or not leaving because I hate it. And Rose is asking why it's ending, and I'll explain it again in a bit here. Shirley's saying she'll miss me, and hey, I'm going to miss you guys. I will. But I'm not vanishing. I'm not vanishing. So, I mean, the show's been doing great. We got a great audience. We've been covering a lot. We've been at it for, almost 8 months now, 5 days a week, 2 guests every time. And it's been a workout, and it's been great. We've had some incredible guests. We've had some good discussions and conversations. The challenges came with me. Like I tired out and found I just wasn't quite fitting in well in the downtown office environment. The tie, the 9 to 5, the predictability. It's just my nature. I live in a preferred eclectic world, bouncing around with disorder and some craziness. And there's plenty of disorder and craziness here at the Western Standards offices, but wasn't enough for me. So I gave notice a few weeks ago again, to make sure we could transition it. We got Nigel Hannaford coming in, taking over the opinion editing here at the Standard. Like I said, it's not just the show. I've been doing the opinion editing for quite some time. And, it was time for some changes for me. And the show's come a long way from where we were when we began 8 months ago in a tiny little closet of a studio. And I mean, it was a closet, and it would get so hot in there, even in winter time. I'd be sitting in there, and poor Nico would be all of 5 feet in front of me. There's some video shots of myself in the old studio with the green screen hanging. That's how much room we had. As you can see with the background, movie magic, it doesn't necessarily look as cramped as it was, but that's where we got going. We've moved into bigger offices now, a much bigger studio, got better gear, got better practice. I like to think I'm better at my ranting and interviewing as well. A lot of things have come along. And yeah, here's the new studio. Nico's putting up a picture of it on the left there. This is what I'm sitting in now. And even then it gets pretty full in here when we bring a bunch in. But that's more like my view on the way out. We got a glass wall. I can look out into the newsroom there. And here's a real-time shot of me from behind. And as you can see, Melanie working to my right there, and the light's glaring off of there. But yeah, we got a real open concept. Nico's waving. Melanie's waving. There we go. Just to give some behind-the-scenes look of where I've been working all this time and where all the rest of our stuff gets produced here at the Western Standard. So, and I just want to talk about that. Like I said, my time's kind of moving on from this show, but I'm not gone. I'm still going to be writing columns for the Western Standard. I might appear on the Pipeline or some other specials. Tracy Totten saying, can't you do the show from home? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I might do all sorts of things. We'll see. It's me. I'm not going to shut up. I'm going to take a breather for a little bit, but I've always got more to get on to. I mean, I do just, to push on for other people if they're looking to see some of the other stuff I do. I do have a YouTube channel. You can search that out. Of course, I've got my own website at corymorgan.com, and I'm on Twitter, Cory B. Morgan. And again, you're going to see my columns here at the Western Standard still appearing, and I'll be doing things or specials and stuff like that here. Again, I'm not leaving in a rage, or the place isn't falling apart, or I wasn't fired or anything like that. It's just a change and a transition. But I like to be able to review too, and just to show how much we've grown. And this show certainly wasn't a waste over this 8 months, as Nico kind of showed with those pictures and everything. We have come a long way. That the whole digital product, the respectability, the whole basis with the Western Standard is a world ahead of where it was before we began this venture. And there's going to be a lot more coming. And as we see with those series from Melanie and things like that, the digital productions are going to keep coming. So just want to reiterate all that. And again, we'll just have a good final show here, guys, and cover some issues and have some fun. And like I said, not gone, just changing things. All right, let's see. Let's get on to the newsroom and see what else is happening out there with Mr. Naylor, our news editor. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
Oh, man, you and Lisa LaFlamme in the same week. Journalism will never be the same.
I just refuse to color my hair for Derek.
There you go. You'll notice I'm a bit dressed down today, Cory. I declared today was Hawaiian Shirt Day in the office. There you go, having a group photo with you. You're the only one wearing a tie. We thought that would be apropos for your final day. So I declared it, and mainly because Derek's away today and hopefully not in a place where he can monitor this broadcast. So, you know what, Cory, it's been a pleasure over the last couple of years doing these updates with you, and I plan on continuing them. We'll have a morning news update video going out every day. But, sir, the pleasure has been mine the last few months.
Right on. Well, and actually, it's good. I was wondering if we're going to, because that news update's been a big part of this. I mean, kicks off people's day or their midday to say, well, what's happening, what's up on the site, and give them stuff to review and seek out. So good to see a continuation. Yeah,
and there's lots of stuff already. It's a busy news Friday, Cory. Our main story at the moment is Matthew Horwood, our parliamentary bureau chief, has got an interview with Nick Nanos, a noted pollster in the country, who basically says it's a slam dunk for Pierre Poilievre in the federal leadership race. He says the numbers are all looking good, and it's all pointing to a first ballot victory for Pierre Poilievre. Another candidate, Leslyn Lewis, sent out an email this morning speaking about the Nuremberg codes and warning that a day of reckoning may be coming. The Nuremberg Code was set up after World War II to prevent basically experiments on humans. And Miss Lewis thinks a day of reckoning may be coming again on that. Jonathan Bradley's got a story on 7 more Freedom Convoy supporters having their charges dropped due to lack of evidence. Surprise, surprise. Good story from our Christopher Oldcorn. Long-term care home outbreaks of COVID in Saskatchewan, up 1,500% from the last reporting period. And speaking of Miss Laflamme, CTV has announced they're launching an investigation into what the hell happened there and led to her firing for having gray hair. Also from Chris Oldcorn, a good story on the youngest ever transgendered model, a 10-year-old, used to be a boy, now is a girl, was walking the catwalk at New York Fashion Week. And there's a good story from Christopher there. And we've got a few good things to come this afternoon. My new favorite politician, you've mentioned her, the Prime Minister of Finland. More intimate dancing videos revealed today, not with her husband. And she has admitted she has taken a drug test to clear her name from the video that was released yesterday of her partying it up. So she looks like a good time. And very important story coming from Matthew Horwood again, dealing with the tragic deaths of 5 doctors in Ontario over the last couple of weeks. Matthew has talked to some experts, including a Calgary doctor who says we need to look closely at vaccines as being the cause of those deaths. So that'll be a controversial story, and we're going to get that up soon, Cory.
Right on. Yeah, and I know nobody else likes touching those stories, but somebody's got to cover it. We keep getting punted for it, but we're stubborn. We're not giving up.
Yeah, we're still not back on Twitter yet. So yeah, we'll keep on top of it, Cory.
Well, right on, Dave. Thank you for the very colorful check-in with that shirt. People could hear you over its loudness all the same, and I'll look forward to your news updates, though I'll be watching them rather than taking part in them.
I'm told Christopher Oldcorn, our Saskatchewan reporter, when he comes on today, we'll have a show scrambling for people to, we'll have a shirt that will leave people scrambling to turn down their screens. So I look forward to that.
Yeah. Live it up on this last Friday Triggered. Right on, Dave. I'll see you after the show. All right, that is our news editor, Dave Naylor. Yes, we do those daily news check-ins. As you can see, lots on the go, reporting on everything from international things like the Prime Minister of Finland's partying ways to more local things. You can see that story too for that young fella in Edmonton who passed away, that kid who was the strong Oilers fan. We cover it all, local stuff, international, national. And the reason we're doing that is because you guys have subscribed, and we really appreciate that. And, so CTV, these outlets, they're falling apart, guys. They're dinosaurs. They're going by the wayside. Independent media is the future. And the way we can do it, the way we can stay independent is through you guys taken out subscriptions with us, and you have in droves. Thousands of you have subscribed, and I thank you very much. We really do appreciate that. And if you haven't yet, $10 a month, guys, $99 for a year. It's a good deal. You get full access to all of these stories, all of those columns, opinions, stuff as it's breaking. You get the newsletter, all of those things for $10 a month. Well worth it, and it helps continue to support us so we can keep expanding and covering more things. So check it out, Western Standard News/membership. The other thing is sponsorship, and I'll run a quick ad actually because there's an event coming up with the Alberta Prosperity Project, and we want to remind you all of what it's all about. Maybe.
On Thursday, August 25th, the Alberta Prosperity Project and Rebel News are hosting a special UCP leadership dinner and forum at the Edmonton Convention Centre. We're asking the UCP leadership candidates tough but fair questions, like how will they protect our rights and freedoms from the United Nations Agenda 2030 and World Economic Forum's Great Reset? How will they fight the climate change initiative? And how will they counter inflation? You won't want to miss this event. Get your ticket today at www.albertaprosperityproject.com.
Here you are, a big forum and dinner. And hey, you can see that screen. So you're wondering where I turn my head to the right all the time to look at the comments and everything. You can kind of see that view over there. That's why my head's always going over to see what you're saying, because the camera's in the front. I don't have a screen quite right behind them. That stuff's going to be coming, I guess, I imagine, or whatever, for future shows and things. But that's why my head's always working left to right, especially today. I really want to get into those comments today, chat with you guys a bit more. You know, as I said, I'm accessible. I'm online, but I'm not, going to be here as daily and regular as before. Arthur Green, our intrepid Bonnieville presence up there, saying, proud to work with you, Cory. Bye. Yes, and I'm not gone, Arthur. I just won't be here all the time, every day with these things as we go on. So let's see what else we got going on. That story with the Prime Minister in Finland, it is something. She is easy on the eyes as a Prime Minister as far as those go. But, these scandals, I mean, I'm not living in Finland. I don't know. But it looks to me that she's a young lady. She's been partying it up, and those videos got out. They were private videos. I didn't look beyond the pale. I guess a little undignified if somebody thinks it's a prime minister. But I imagine the Finns knew they were electing somebody who's young and still out there and having a lively time and everything. So it shouldn't be such a shocking thing. Again, you wonder about some of the double standards that politicians can be held to sometimes, particularly female ones. And, she submitted herself to a drug test because she was at a party where there's some video of it. They're dancing and living it up and everything else. Well, a lot of us did that when we were 30-something. Sometimes I think in our digital age, we get a little too fickle and we almost canonize our political leaders and expect perfection out of them. She's just being human and living a little there. But I guess it's up to the voters and people in Finland as to whether or not her behavior is acceptable in a prime minister. God knows our own prime minister hasn't always behaved in his best ways in his youth either. And Canadians, at least a lot of them, have gotten over that. But an interesting story anyways, and the thing is too, prior to everybody having a smartphone and everybody recording everything you do all the time, people did little things and you never did see it. They got forgotten, or it was just chatter between friends or social acquaintances. Now you can do the most minor of things. It goes up on the internet and suddenly the whole world sees it, as we're seeing there. We're living in some great and interesting times, but there are also some terribly risky times for some politicians too. If you're up and coming and aspiring to go somewhere, be careful with what you're allowing to get on video, because it could come back and bite you on the butt later. So speaking of up and coming, ambitious young politicians, I got Zach Abdi on deck there. Let's bring him in. So, I gave some background earlier. Some people have joined the show since. I was talking about the Alberta Liberals earlier. Not typically a party we talk a lot about here, but you responded to it with a TikTok video, and I thought it was great. It was upbeat and optimistic and corrected me on what you felt was wrong with it. And you are an aspiring Liberal candidate in Edmonton City Centre, I believe.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Cory. It's good to be on the show for the first time. It's kind of sad to see your show come to an end. But yeah, as you alluded to, I am running for the Alberta Liberal Party nominee for Edmonton City Centre. And a bit about my background. I was born and raised in Ontario, but I've been living in Alberta for almost the last 10 years and in downtown. And some of the issues that I've been hearing on the doorsteps is public safety, issues with petty crime on the rise, talking to self-employed workers and them not getting a fair deal when it comes to the gig economy, and as well as a few conversations about a provincial sales tax.
Okay, and I guess being in the urban area of Edmonton, the issues are very similar to here, where I'm in downtown Calgary. As you said, petty crimes. We have an addiction epidemic. It's led to a lot of challenges for people living in urban areas, and you get everything from shoplifting to bike thefts or car break-ins. Is that sort of what you're addressing, or?
Yeah, like one of the part of the reason why I'm running is a little bit more about myself. Is my partner and I, we recently bought a condo in downtown Edmonton 2 years ago. We love it here. It's amazing. We're close by the river valley, and we've gotten to know the community and connect with folks. And a lot of the petty crime that we've been seeing, it's usually stuff to do with needles on the floor, public drug use, public defecation. And a lot of that stuff isn't being addressed by the current incumbent MLA and as well as the current government. And there's things that we can do in the short term, such as, for example, installing public bathrooms or working with the city and funding public bathrooms in and around the downtown core, right? Our vulnerable neighbors do have a right to some dignity. And and businesses too, right? A lot of the businesses, the vandalism they see against their property, it's usually confrontational and has to do with maybe access to the bathroom or maybe staying inside. And we can do things to alleviate some of that pressure.
Okay, so we've got a general election. It looks like probably about 7-8 months away coming up, and presumably, you'll probably be running in it. And it's something that you'd responded to. And as I said in my earlier show, I mean, the Liberal Party, for people who don't know, it's the oldest party in Alberta. They were our very first governing party with Rutherford. They had ups and downs, but what you'd spoken on as well, of course, the highest point in living memory was with Lawrence Decore leading it, the former mayor of Edmonton. Very well respected Albertan, and he came very close to actually winning the election and becoming a Liberal premier. Again, I argued it was only he had the ill timing of catching the wave of Ralph Klein that sort of just overwhelmed him, and he didn't quite make it in. But he was running on a very, you questioned the word conservative, fair enough, but a fiscally tight campaign platform at that time because debt was high and interest rates were high. But your party's been in kind of a long, slow decline ever since then. And you've got a lot of rebuilding to do, and you're currently kind of stuck with an interim leader. What I was impressed with was your optimism and still going forward. How do you look to make a mark, though, within such a short time till the election?
For me, that's a good question. And to be a Liberal in Alberta, you have to be optimistic. And to me, yes, it's a fact that we have been in decline. And I think a big reason for that has to do with controlling the narrative. A lot of folks get us mixed up with the federal Liberals and can't seem to distinguish the two. And for us, it's just going back to our roots. And Lawrence Decore, to me, he's not just one of my favorite Liberal politicians, but one of my favorite politicians, not just in Alberta, but all of Canadian history. And for the things that he's advocated for. And if we go back to our roots, talk about fiscal responsibility, because I'm a firm believer, a strong economy leads to better outcomes for everyone, and we can do a better job in tackling social issues when the economy is strong. And a lot of that message has been lost just due to more press and attention going to the rival parties such as the UCP and the NDP.
Yeah, well, Alberta had kind of current is we'd always been more of a multi-party system, or at least recently. We had a number of NDP seats, we had a large number of Liberal seats, we had the Progressive Conservatives we had Progressive Conservatives in Wildrose. But we've kind of fallen into a true two-party system for the time being. And personally, I like to see more parties in there. I really actually do. And I think, a Liberal presence would help reduce the polarity. I mean, I don't want to see a Liberal government. Look, I'm an apologetic libertarian conservative, but I think our legislature would be a lot more balanced if we had sort of that voice in the middle sitting in there as more of a classical Liberal anyways.
Absolutely. And that's what the Alberta Liberal Party is for me, right? Liberalism in terms of the classical sense, right in the center, strong on fiscal issues and also moderate on social issues. And we can get there if we get a better job in controlling the narrative. And when it comes to representation, I do agree, right? If you look, I know federal issues and provincial issues are two different matters. But if you look, if the fact that the federal Liberals picked up 2 seats in Alberta and managed to capture, I think, slightly under 20% of the popular vote in the province. We can do that as well here. We just have to build our party's presence, rebuild the infrastructure, and just focus on positive messaging.
Yeah, so I mean, the messaging and another challenge you have. I mean, have you heard, or I'm not sure how tapped you are with the party mechanism? You need a leader. John's been doing what he can as an interim, but is there going to be something scheduled to try and draw somebody in? I know it was an unfortunate outcome, seeking a leader. Nobody put their name in, kind of, but you're going to have to get somebody in before the general election, because that's where you need to speak for and brand the party.
In terms of right now, for me, my focus is just on the campaign and connecting with folks in Edmonton City Centre. The party is working on what the next steps are, but I can say with positivity and certainty that the Alberta Liberal Party will be around, and I will be a candidate on the ballot.
Okay, great. I saw actually, I think it was on Twitter or somewhere else too, there's another Edmonton gentleman who's running for a nomination. So there's some folks on the ground like yourself who are still planning on making a go of the next election. So you're not vanishing yet.
Oh, absolutely. One of our regional directors, Irene Hunter, she's the regional chair for Edmonton, and she's been doing a really good job in building the party's presence in Edmonton. I believe we have Abdi Buckle, who's considering running in Millwoods. And there is Jacob, who's also running in I believe, Strathcona, Sherwood Park area. So there's a lot of things happening in the Edmonton area, and the party is rebuilding our infrastructure here.
Okay, and you did touch on one of the challenges your party's had is, whether you like it or not, you end up wearing the reputation of the federal Liberals. And I do believe the current provincial Liberal Party doesn't have a formal tie to the federal party, aside from the name.
No, and there's no formal links or anything, right? And it goes back to just sticking with the narrative, right? Because the Alberta Liberal Party, we do well when we control the narrative and when we focus on issues that are relevant to the province and to Albertans, and we can make a comeback, right? And we've seen Liberal parties in Western Canada bounce back. We've seen it in the case in Yukon and Manitoba. They made some small but steady progress, and Saskatchewan, they're also making their gains there too.
Yeah, well, and it's starting, everything starts small initially. I was with the Alberta Alliance Party way back when we had 1 seat almost 20 years ago, I think it was, and worked that up eventually through a lot of work and compromise up into official opposition, and then became the Wild Rose Party, and then we blew it all up and screwed it up. But a party can come from a small seed and with some work can still rebuild.
Oh, absolutely. And Rachel Notley is one thing I admire her about her leadership is proof of that, right? She built the NDP up, right? And we can do the same thing with the Liberals. It's just, and one thing I'm excited about, a lot of the people who are working with Irene and with the party in the Edmonton area are young folks, and they're committed to the party and they're committed to the Liberal cause.
Great. Like one of my commenters there, I think it was Paradoxy. Yeah, it was mentioning, and I wanted to ask too, the Alberta Party, I mean, they're of a very similar type platform. I think trying to land in what they call the middle, though always saying middle makes it hard to define where you actually are. But I mean, sometimes some of the resources perhaps or support's being drained in multiple directions. Have you been in communication with the Alberta Party at all?
No, but I'll actually tell you a funny story. I'm not involved with the Alberta Party, but I actually did, and maybe some of the folks at the Alberta Liberal Party will get a bit upset, but I actually did take out a membership with the UCP, and I did cancel it a week later because I was just so fed up with the direction of the party. There's no really third option or alternative, and for me, the Alberta Party is a party that kind of shifts with every leader and doesn't really have a true cause or values. And it was actually when I was walking with my partner and our dog by the Lawrence Decor lookout point, that's where I made the decision to run for the party and help and be committed to rebuilding it. Because ultimately, I do think there's a place for our party. And Albertans do deserve, as you said, a third option, right? And I believe we do provide that option.
Well, that's great. Well, I really do appreciate it. And like I said, I was impressed with your optimistic attitude and the way you approached it. See, I focus on crabbiness and ranting and things such as that. I think there's a role for that as well, of course. But you countered, my point on Mr. decor and what I'd call the, reference the party as conservative leaning back in the 90s. And I just think you're taking a good pragmatic approach up there in Edmonton. So I was happy to see that there's still some life going on and somebody with some common sense making a go of it. So where can people find information about your campaign and where you're going, Zach?
Definitely. So they can reach me at my website at zachabdi.ca. And from there, they can find links through for my social media, some of the issues that I'm running on, and any upcoming events as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much again for joining me today, Zach. I think you are the first provincial Liberal I had on this show, and you cap off my final episode of this show. So I appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing how you do up there.
For sure. And I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to end it on a upbeat and positive note.
Great. Thanks, Zach.
Take care.
Okay, so that's Zach Abdi from he's running in Edmonton City Centre. And as I said, that's pretty different for me. I mean, this is definitely a show with a predominantly conservative audience. In some ways, as I said, I've run for and I've worked within up and coming small parties looking at a minority amount of vote, a limited amount of support. And it's a tough go. But it does help me build a little bit of respect for people who are going to put their neck out there and give it a go. And he just seems so positive. I wanted to talk to him because the Liberals, it does have a long history, and they weren't, as some others have pointed out, Liberals kind of pushed way over to the left of where they used to be. It used to be a little more of a center left rather than this getting almost into the NDP waters. And I think that's part of what killed them. When David Kahn was running them, Kahn is very far left. And if people are going to go far left, they're going to go NDP. There's no sense just pretending with a Liberal Party. They got to define themselves to what they are. And I would rather see a Liberal opposition than an NDP one. Like, we've got a polarization in the legislature right now. We got UCP, we got Liberal. Oh, we got the people that Kenny's kicked out of the party over in the independent corner over there. But it's still, especially if we're looking at Edmonton City Centre. Look, guys, UCP's never going to win a seat in Edmonton City Centre. Not going to happen. But, having a good common sense Liberal in there wouldn't be necessarily such a bad thing. A pretty long shot. It's a long shot for a party that right now can't attract a leader. I imagine they don't have a heck of a lot of money, but they do have a lot of history and a name to themselves. And who knows what will happen? As I said, things change over the course of years quite quickly. People would have written off the Alberta Party, the Alberta Alliance Party, 18 years ago or whenever the heck it was when I first got involved. You think, this is never going anywhere. And well, it kind of went somewhere. And as I said, kind of flared out, but it was part of the evolution of where things are today. And I don't know, as others are pointing out, Pamela, and don't worry, Jet, I pick you out for questions too. But there's that tie, to Pierre Elliott Trudeau, to the federal Liberals. It's a hard reputation to shake. The federal Liberal Party has abused Alberta so many times over so many years under so many leaders that wearing that name in this province is a pretty difficult go, to say the least. It's not a quick way to electoral viability around here. Either way, Zach has a positive attitude and he's got some balls to make that run for it. So I was glad I could have him on today. One final shot. I really do like to listen to every voice out there, even the ones I won't necessarily fully agree with. You listen to the guy. Zach's clearly a bright guy with a good attitude. I think we could do far worse than people like him in the legislature to add a voice to it versus some of the NDP members, right, who are way the heck out there. Let's get some common sense in there. Some of the old Liberals do have common sense. If you look at political leanings and labelings, some people call that divisive, counterintuitive. Fair enough. But if I label myself in any sort of way, most of you guys know I'm a classical Liberal. That's the term for it. Unfortunately, the modern Liberals have sort of ruined the Liberal name. But it's I've always been for small government, heavily focused on individual rights. Closer to just that classical libertarian, I guess, in a way. And socially indifferent. I have my own things, my own views and everything. But most of the views are, I don't care if somebody's views are totally different than mine. If you want to do your thing, do your thing. Just leave me the hell out of it. Unfortunately, and that's always the mark of extremism, and that's where I get a problem, whether it's the extreme right or extreme left. If people are on the extremes, they can't let it go. They want to force everybody else to take part in what they're doing, and they want to force everybody else to embrace their politics. And we certainly see that, say, with pandemic legislation and things like that. I like it this way, thus everybody else has to be this way. And it's just not the way to go with things. Paradoxy saying maybe Cory's leaving to run for the Liberal Party or leader of the Liberal Party. No, that's not going to happen. I am one of those who will never say never, but I tell you what, the odds of me getting into actual formal politics again are extremely slim. I'm certainly not leaving with any political plans or aspirations. None of that's going on. I did get that from a few people when when we first put word out that I was moving. Oh, who are you running for? What are you doing? Or which campaign are you working for? No. I'm not. I'm much better to be able to talk about it than to take part within it. So yeah, if you see me run, it'll be similar to my run for the NDP nomination that I did a few years ago, which was more of a parody run than a real one. Though it would have been pretty fun if I'd won that nomination, but unfortunately, Madam Notley kicked me out of the race, so I had to move on from there. Okay, let me speak to one of our sponsors as we move along here today, guys, and that is, who am I talking about? Oh yes, Resistance Coffee Company, a good Western Canadian company. Again, these guys who provide, speaking of Liberals, the Liberal Tears mug that I do enjoy, and of course, beyond the kitschy and fun swag with their mugs and hats and shirts and such, as their name suggests, they put out some great coffee, guys. It's really good stuff. Get it in, grind it fresh. It's delivered right to your house. It's as convenient as it gets. It can only be more convenient if they actually brewed it for you, but they don't go that far. And most of all, and that's what they pride themselves on, they are the anti-woke. They are not woke. They don't take some of your money and throw it towards some woke cause or anything like that. Actually, 10% of every purchase there goes towards causes that stand up for individual freedoms, like the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms and a few other groups. And again, they're transparent. You can see that right on their site at resistancecoffee.com, where that 10% goes towards. And their names are great. They're Tree Hugger Coffee, as you can see there. Liberal Tears, of course, that's their medium roast. Black Gold, I think, is their dark one. Empty Promises for decaf. They're quite funny. And they're unapologetically conservative. And of course, most important of all, they make good coffee. So if you get coffee, as most of us do, and drink it regularly, I'm sorry, Jane, I know you can't anymore, but I can. And you can get it at resistancecoffee.com/triggered, and you'll get yet another 10% off. So check them out, guys. They're a good sponsor, and it's good coffee. And keep your money in conservative businesses. It's a nice change. All right. Some of these stories, let's go through some news stuff, eh? This one got me. I'm going to be doing some more Uber driving. Somebody mentioned that on there. I like driving Uber. I've never made apologies for it. I had some crackpot lefty in the backseat of my car, I don't know, a year and a half ago. It sounds the wrong way. He was a passenger while I was Uber driving. And he was live tweeting it, I guess. I'm looking, oh, look, Cory Morgan driving Uber. Well, yeah, I never made a secret of it. I like it. It clears the mind. I get to talk to people and listen to people, most important of all. And from a completely different mix, you get everybody in Uber. You never know who's going to come in. Sometimes they want to be silent and stare at their phone. Sometimes they want to talk about sports. Sometimes they want to talk about the weather. Sometimes they want to talk politics. I just listen, and I tell you, I learn a heck of a lot more with Uber passengers and listening on those conversations than the hours a day I spend reading through news stories and books and things like that. Though, of course, I gather a lot out of those as well. So I'm going to be doing a lot more Uber in the time to come here because it's flexible and I quite enjoy it. Something's going to annoy me on it, though, is watching the roads and doing these things. Southeast Calgary. This is a pure example of how this city and many urban areas have an anti-automotive ideology. It's not pro-bike lane. This exposed truly what it's all about. It's all about anti-car. And they finally kind of came right out of their anti-car closet with this. There's 18th Street. For people who don't know it, it goes down into an area that probably the urbanite extremists that we have in city council, along with that extremist mayor with their high density zealotry and this whole wanting to pack everybody downtown. There's Quarry Park. It's like an office building complex, a bunch of them down in Southeast Calgary. And it's surrounded by residential. It's sort of a new way to look at cities. People could work in an office environment without having to go all the way down to a city center. There's actually a separate bunch of office towers and everything down that way. And they of course, the crazed build up rather than out group hate that, they lost, I think Imperial moved down there and a few others because they didn't want to live in Ninchies downtown. And they still don't want to live in Gondex downtown. That's why we got massive vacancy rates down here and empty buses for a number of reasons. But either way, 18th Street, one of the main ones to get to Quarry Park, well, the goofy lefties on city council by one of the Courtneys, I think it was Penner or something, said, there's too much traffic on there. It's too fast. We need to slow that traffic down. That's been a Calgary thing for quite some time. We're gonna traffic calming. What it is automotive harassment. That's what their campaign's about. That's why they do it. And they use bike lanes to do it as a tool. So they're going to put a bike lane and close 2 whole lanes on this. There's 2 lanes north, 2 lanes south. They're going to put them down to 1-lane roads, these busy roads that people need to commute, that people need to come home and go to work. And they're going to bung it all up and put bike lanes on them. And there's bike paths right next to this road, right next to it. There's not a lack of bike infrastructure. So it's not to service cyclists. And there's no sense trying to service cyclists because they're the most whiny people on earth. It's never enough. It's never enough. Go to downtown Calgary, look at a bike track, and guess what? They're riding in the middle of the friggin' road anyways. Because, well, that's 10 feet off my path. I'm not going to use it. Or I don't want to wait at the red light with that, so I'll just pretend to be a pedestrian and take my bike across there. It's never enough. And I know there's some good cyclists out there, but most of them are assholes. And people know that. And down on 18th Street, down in that part, over in Southeast Calgary, there is definitely not a lack of cycle infrastructure. So why don't they just close the lanes then? Why go through this charade? Why fake that you're putting bike lanes in to calm traffic and make things safer? If you really wanted to do that, you just put more speed traps out there. We already know how to do that. You guys make revenue out of it. You can stick a person out there with a radar gun and they will easily pay for themselves writing up all those nice tickets. But they're sticking these out in the middle of a residential area on a busy road, residential commercial. It's a connector road. And again, there's no demand for it. There are bike lanes next to it. This shows exactly what the whole agenda of the bike tracks, the bike lanes is. It's an ideology. It's these extremists. They feel if they can hound and harass drivers enough, people will just say, okay, I've had enough. I'll give up and I'll ride the bus to work, or I'll ride a bike to work, or I'll walk, or I'll ride a unicorn because it's about as friggin' realistic. It's Canada. People aren't going to ride a bike in January. But you don't get realism with the ideologues in municipal and, well, pretty much any governments. So they're using these bike tracks, and look how it's working. Downtown Calgary, of course, there's much bigger reasons as to why downtown Calgary has turned into a dystopian nightmare with 30% vacancy. But a part of it, definitely a part of it, is all the road parking. The ground level parking, they've gotten rid of it all down here. All of it. And they've stuck bike lanes on it, empty bike lanes. You know, on the odd nice day, you'll see a few folks riding, but not enough to warrant taking out all those roadways. And what happens with all that? Well, all those ground level businesses that used to be downtown, the retailers, the little restaurants, the pubs, they're gone. Go to check out all the for lease signs down there. And again, it's more complicated than that. There's also a lot of, addicts and crime and other problems going on downtown. The drop in the oil prices, the emptiness of these downtown office buildings. But a large part of it, and businesses tried to say that, but they got shouted down. In fact, they got lied to when they said, don't worry, it won't hurt your business when we take away all the parking there. Of course it will. And the business owners knew that. And they take away all the immediate parking, and guess what? The businesses went broke. Because if your customer can't pull up, grab some products, and leave on a retail level in downtown, they just won't do it. And the other myth that these guys like to spread is that cyclists are good customers. And let me tell you, I know firsthand that that's bullshit. And I fell for that. I lived down in Prentice. We used to see it down there. I mean, it was one of the things I loved when I moved down there, is I noticed that there's all these people parking and getting off and riding their bikes all around my area. And I said to Jane, holy crap, we live in the place where people go out of their way to escape. Like, this is gold. It's beautiful living down here. And when we bought the pub, we thought this is one of the target audiences we're going to do. Well, look at all these cyclists around here. I mean, there's hundreds of them. And there's been a lot. The roads are just crawling with them in summer. We will sponsor bike races, and we'll carry light foods and all sorts of things, craft beers, all this stuff to target them and bring these cyclists in, because they're definitely a market for us out here. Guess what? We were wrong. They are the cheapest buggers you could ever possibly try to target as a market. Not every one of them. We'd have a few come in and sit down and have a beer or have a sandwich or buy, some bottled water or something. For the most part, though, they just wanted to plug my toilet, complain about the taste of our water, and walk out on their clacking plastic shoes. They were a terrible group to target. They drive out there in their high-end SUVs with their bikes hanging off the back, and then they actually fill up our whole community hall parking lot in Prentice so nobody else could park there for weddings or family reunions. And they'll sit on lawn chairs and eat packed lunches while sitting around their tailgates after they've ridden up and down the roads to show everybody how green and fit they are. They're spandex fetishists, and they don't spend any damn money. Either way, just wanted to get my bike rant out for the day, considering when it's just so profoundly stupid as to take an entire road lane out of an important artery in southeast Calgary like that. And again, it exposes their agenda. It has nothing to do with getting more people on bikes. I mean, those are the numbers that come out every year too, and they poll people and everything. And guess what? The amount of regular bicycle commuters in the city, like people who commute to work and back, because that's what they always talk about, what's so important. It sits at like 2 to 4% of the population. It's tiny. I mean, there's a lot of recreational bike riders. Sure, lots of people do. Calgary's got some of the most extensive bike trails in North America. But actually, folks who need to commute downtown and get to offices and buildings and things like that, no, it's a tiny amount. And the more lanes we build, it doesn't change. That amount doesn't get bigger because it's just a tiny minority of people who want to do that, who want to get up that much extra early, who have the ability to show up at the office and shower on a hot day after riding their bike and change their clothes for work, or in wintertime, freeze through the slush and snow and all that crap. And then most of all, what these guys don't realize is it's not working and not just getting people on bikes, but it's driving people out of the cities. They whine about urban sprawl. Oh, big deal. It's happening. In fact, you guys are making it worse because businesses are locating outside of the city. Look at the county of Rocky View. They're doing great. All sorts of industrial and office and all sorts of things popping up out there, along with, of course, the people and dollars going to work there. Okotoks, you can't find a house in that town. They're growing so fast because people don't want to live in this city, pay these taxes, and be under that crazed woke government. So they're going down there and they're commuting up here. So think harder. Quit trying to jam that crap down our throats because it's not helping your city a bit. It's not achieving your goal. It's not making it more dense. It's in fact doing the opposite. What's this? A caller on CHQR once called in with a major complaint about cyclists. His assertion was they're unlicensed, unregistered, and uninsured. Therefore, they should never get precedence over motor vehicles. Yeah, I'm mixed on that, you know. And I don't see more government. I mean, I don't like seeing more government as a solution to anything. And I don't want to force the cyclists to go through all that crap. They don't necessarily need to. Just get out of it. You know, as somebody else was saying, he's a cyclist, but he can ride on the roads. Yes, and they always had. And I had another cyclist talking to me at an event the other day. And he was saying he rides, but he doesn't support the lanes and everything. He felt safer when he was on the roads in the past, when you, again, had some respect and it was shared space. There's always going to be jerky drivers, absolutely dangerous ones out there. But there's also a lot of jerky cyclists. There always were too. And I remember the bike couriers when couriers were a much bigger thing, 20, 30 years ago, before email and all that. And boy, those guys were hair-raising riding downtown, the way they would weave in and out of traffic and drive things nuts. But the bike lanes, they don't fix anything. They don't help anything, particularly downtown. We don't need it. If we want recreational riding, we literally in Calgary have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dedicated kilometers of bike paths all over where you can go ride with the family perfectly safely and have a good time. The whole point of all these bike lanes downtown is traffic hindrance and harassment on an ideological basis, and it's not helping anybody. Either way, we'll see. They're saying it's a trial project, this idiotic one down by Cory Park, by the way, but we know these trial projects, they always become permanent. All right, I see Chris Oldcorn. I can't miss him in that lobby with that shirt there. It looks like there's fireworks going off down there in the background, and see what's happening out there in Saskatchewan. So, hey, Chris, good to see you.
Hey, Cory, nice to be on.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your final show.
It is indeed, as I said, or at least final triggered. Who knows what comes down the road and so on. But I definitely wanted to talk to all of our regular reporters and columnists and guests in this final week. So we get to cap it off with you. I was going to get you earlier, but I see you were out traveling all week.
Yes, I drove. Well, that was quite the drive. I drove from Regina to Toronto and back to pick up my daughter who was coming back from Brazil. So because the flights were so messed up that it was going to be next to impossible to actually fly there to pick her up, depending on what happened with her flight from Brazil, my flight from Regina to Toronto. So it was just actually easier to drive 6,000 kilometers in 6 days.
Well,
thank you, Trudeau, for making the airports a complete mess.
It's quite a haul. You managed to keep your eyes open for that interminable Northern Ontario stretch then. You don't get to really realize just how big Ontario is till you try and drive it.
Oh yeah, like that's more than half the drive is Ontario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's about almost 18 hours of the 26-hour drive is in Ontario. So it's quite a big province.
It is that.
So.
And it's just the biggest headache of it's all kind of packed into that one southern part, actually. The rest of them aren't so bad necessarily.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go through some of the stuff you've been working on. Maybe we'll start with what was your most recent opinion piece there that we put up?
Are we talking about the private jets?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I wrote a piece. It was actually a news piece on the World Economic Forum and them wanting us to get rid of our cars. I heard you earlier talking about bike lanes and public transit. Same idea. They think that we should give up our cars because it'll be better for the environment. So I wrote an opinion piece basically saying, well, when you give up your private jets, I might consider giving up my car, given how much pollution private jets actually put into the atmosphere. It's CO2 emissions, which is what everybody's worried about. And just to give you an example, the private jets actually emit more CO2 than commercial jets, even though they're smaller. And one of the reasons is they have to fly at a closer to the Earth, so they have more gravity they got to fight against. And plenty of these people in the WF have no issues using their private jets. As a matter of fact, the biggest issue they have at their annual conference is parking all the private jets, not parking the cars, but parking their jets. So some have to actually land, get off their jet then flies to another airport to be parked until it flies back to pick them up and then take them to wherever they are going to next. Some of the biggest emitters out there, I'll just use Kylie Jenner. There's actually a Twitter account called Celeb Jets, and you can go and see every single celebrity. It posts immediately once their plane starts flying from one spot to another. She is one of the biggest users of her private jet and for incredibly short trips. So a couple of weeks ago, she used her jet 5 times in 1 week for flights of less than 20 minutes, including one flight for 3 minutes. Now, to put that into perspective for the CO2 emissions people, a 3-minute flight by Kylie Jenner actually was worse for the environment than 10 Ugandans for their entire year in terms of their carbon footprint, a 3-minute flight. Meanwhile, we're being told to reduce our carbon emissions. And the fact is, the people in the top 1%, their carbon emissions are 30 times the level we need to be at by 2030 to keep the planet from warming more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. Interesting part, the lowest 50% of the population already are below what that target is. The real problem is the people at the top flying around in their private planes. And they are using a lot more energy and emitting a lot more carbon into the atmosphere than you and I are. Cory, even if we are riding our bikes or driving our cars, it doesn't matter. They're still the biggest emitters.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that website that tracks those celebrities because, I saw that embedded in your story there, and it's a great site. It's just worth watching because I think that's what it takes to drive home to some of the people. You know what? If they were conspicuously consuming, they're rich, they're eating caviar for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, good for them. It's the hypocrisy that's the problem when they're telling everybody else to cut back, everybody else to stay close to home, everybody to eat a 100-mile diet. People like DiCaprio with a yacht that's bigger than some apartment buildings is flying around the planet telling us we got to tighten up. That needs to be exposed.
And so many of these Hollywood elites are all, on the left side of politics and are constantly chirping on climate change and all this stuff. And some of their homes are the biggest emitters as well. It's not just their jets. And for example, some of the other people that round out the top emitters of CO2 for celebrities, you got people like Taylor Swift, you got Jay-Z, you got Floyd Mayweather. They're all using a tremendous amount of private jet travel. I do understand that once you get to a certain level of celebrity that you need to be concerned about your privacy and safety. I get that. But there are plenty of ways you can still travel commercial air and protect your privacy and safety. So I think at some point, some of these people think they're entitled to a private jet, that they don't have to fly with the rest of us. But like I say in my story, I've flown first class a bunch of times. Yes, the food's better, the seats are bigger. But really, it's not all that bad. I'm pretty sure you can tough it out in first class. It's not exactly like, you're being asked to ride a horse or something.
No, and I read an article recently from somebody else in a different publication, but they were talking about how a lot of world leaders actually fly commercial, not for official functions. Fair enough. You're a president, you're a prime minister. You should have a different degree of security. I don't begrudge them needing a private jet for those functions and things like that. They got to bring people with them. But when they go on their personal vacations, even Boris Johnson flew commercial, and he leads a country much bigger than ours that's dealt with a lot more direct threat to the prime minister. When it was his personal time on a vacation, sure, he flew first class, and sure, he had security. That's all fair. But he didn't take the private jet for that because it's a private thing. Trudeau, on the other end, he's bouncing around surfing and down to Costa Rica and all over the place on this, and we're putting the bill.
Yes, and actually, speaking about Trudeau's trip, I also mentioned that in my article. It's an 8-hour flight to get there and 8 hours to get back. And he's flying on what is essentially a private jet. And the amount of emissions that he used was the equivalent of a person commuting to work 2 hours a day, every single day of the week, 7 days a week, for a year and a half, just flying one way. So he's flying around the country telling us to curb our emissions, and he's probably in the top 5 emitters in all of Canada. The hypocrisy with Trudeau just keeps going regardless of what topic we bring up. But this one, especially since he was flying around on his private jet to make climate change announcements, as he was doing in the weeks prior to going on that vacation to Costa Rica.
Yeah, likewise, others like Mr. Suzuki with his tree houses and so many of these climate hypocrites. I'm just glad you wrote it up just to keep pointing it out. I don't know if we'll ever get a solution to these jerks. But again, as I said, hey, go around. You can fly to the corner store for all I care. Just don't tell me how I'm supposed to live if you're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like they're complete hypocrites. And if you look at any successful organization, leaders lead by example. And we're not seeing a good example here for what they want us to do compared to what they're actually doing themselves. So I said, basically if you agree to ban private jets, then I will start to consider my own carbon emissions. But at the present moment in time, I am a small emitter compared to the people telling me I need to reduce it. And quite frankly, I just bought a car that's gas powered, not hybrid. So not electric, because I can't get anywhere. I live in Regina. 400 kilometers gets me nowhere.
No, so, in winter, even less.
Yeah. Or if I decide to tow something, even less. So
the EVs are not there yet, not even close. Well, let's get into some of the new stuff. This is a concerning story with the long-term care outbreaks you got going on with COVID out in Saskatchewan. A 1,500% spike. Like, COVID, I think we're kind of realizing for healthier, younger people, it's not as high of concern. But we do know also people in long care facilities can be very vulnerable to it, and it can cause a lot of harm. Well, here we go again.
Yes, we saw a massive spike in Saskatchewan. Depending on what province you're in, some provinces have outbreaks of anywhere that has an outbreak. In Saskatchewan, they only track outbreaks in long-term care homes and care homes. And the outbreaks went from 3 last month to 46, which is 1,500% increase. But keeping in mind, this is in care homes where the average age is above 75. The average age of someone in a long-term care home is like where you actually have full nursing care is over the age of 80. So it's no surprise that older people are getting the flu. We don't have many people dying from it, though. We only have 7 deaths per week from COVID-19 related illnesses. And the interesting thing here is they're also the most vaccinated. They also, in the same report, showed the vaccination levels of people over the age of 65. And it was substantially higher than the general population. Now, there's the whole argument that, oh, if you get vaccinated, your symptoms will be less severe. We actually have no proof of that. No one's really done an actual scientific study on that. We've just kind of been told that after the vaccine wasn't a vaccine. And actually, there was a clever comment of someone on my story who actually said we should stop using the word vaccine and just start calling them shots. And I tend to agree with that. But unfortunately, I have to use the government language for the time being. But I think at some point, we really need to stop calling them a vaccine and just refer to it as like a booster shot or a flu shot or something. Because quite frankly, vaccines.
I don't want to fall, but we can get kicked off YouTube for this sort of talk.
Oh boy.
I despise it and it's wrong, but I get your point.
Yeah, well, one of my stories got us kicked off Twitter, so
it's wrong, and that's something maybe we can kind of round out our conversation with. I mean, we're an independent media; we've got views. You don't just write news; you write columns, and that's part of what we discussed. And it's I think independent media is the future. We're doing great. The Standard's growing, Rebel's growing, True North is growing, Epoch Times. And the legacy media is fading, but we are beholden, unfortunately, still we're dependent on those social media giants, YouTube, Facebook, Google, Twitter, and boy, they are really ramping up the abuse to chill our conversation to times like right now when we got to be careful about how in depth we want to go on it.
Yes,
and that's a bad development for news.
I'm not overly pleased in the. Even like long term, not very overly pleased with social media giants, but lately it's been the censorship has hit an entirely new level. As we like the story on Twitter, the guy was banned there. My story had nothing to do with COVID-19. It was a story about government employees doing the opposite of a government policy. It could have been anything I was talking about. I could have been talking about, like dog catchers and they're, catching too many dogs that aren't violating, dog laws or something. It could have been anything in there. It was it was a story about government workers not doing what the government has instructed them to do. That's a story. It doesn't matter what the content is. And somehow Twitter, bans us for it. It's ridiculous.
It was
I
news
couldn't believe it.
And we still haven't, we're trying to get through the appeal and we've been failing. They won't address it. And it's an almost condescending attitude they take. I guess we could get right back on Twitter if we would just delete those tweets.
Yeah.
But we've been waiting over a week for the appeal because we don't want to delete them because they were news copy. We don't want to set that precedent to say, hey, to delete them is admitting we did something wrong. We're just tweeting news copy.
And
so, the process is the punishment. We can't get back on there, and we're stuck. Might have to delete those things.
And on top of it, that story that I wrote on the social workers, at the time, it was only 2 social workers. This story is now much bigger. And this afternoon, you'll see a story coming out where the Ministry of Social Services is trying to find out who spoke to the Western Standard. And they have their social workers going to doors, sending emails, trying to figure out who spoke to us. Now, no one has caved so far and said, yes, I was the one that did it. But this story is much bigger. It turns out it's not just 2 social workers. It's an entire sub-department within the Ministry of Social Services who is actually doing what I discussed in that story. So it's not 2 rogue social services. We now have a rogue department, including I have 2 whistleblowers who are social workers who were in a meeting where they said, the supervisor of the department said that we need to get these kids vaccinated as fast as possible before the government steps in and stops us.
Yeah.
That is what Twitter wants to censor.
Yeah.
And that is beyond disgusting.
Up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll see that coming out too. There's more coming on that. So that story that Twitter banned us for, that was like the little crumb at the beginning. And now things are actually starting to, I'm pulling on different strings and the story is starting to really come out about how widespread the actual issue is within social services. And they want to try and find out who it was. And someone, anonymous source in the government, obviously doesn't want to be named, is not pleased that a government ministry is more concerned about finding out who talked about it than figuring out how to actually follow the government's policy on COVID-19 vaccinations for kids. And I think it's a worrying thing that any government wants to find out who were the ones that talked.
Yeah, no,
that's not their job.
We've got weak whistleblower legislation, and you can see why. So we'll move on and finish up with the story. And I'll tell you, my own personal Twitter account has only been suspended twice. Some people never. In both cases, it was because I misgendered Jessica Yaniv. She was the one, if people might recall, who was a transgender activist who got upset with a bunch of estheticians in Vancouver because they wouldn't wax her balls.
Oh, yeah. She threatened me a while ago.
Yeah,
I know who she is. She threatened me before I was with the Western Standard.
Yeah, I referred to her with the wrong pronoun and had my account yanked. That happened actually twice. But that's Twitter and where they're at. So segueing in, we'll just more your next most recent story to wrap things up. A 10-year-old has become the youngest transgender model on the New York Fashion Week.
Yes, quite an accomplishment. This individual, Noella, is her female name. She started refusing to wear boys' clothes when she was a baby. And obviously, until she could put words together, she couldn't say no boys' clothes to her two non-binary parents until she could speak. And then they took her to a gender-affirming clinic, which said, no, she's actually female. So they started to socially transition her at the age of 4. She officially changed her name to a female name at age 7 and is now the youngest transgender model to walk the runway, which she did for a company called Trans Clothing Company, which is a company that specializes, according to their website, in transgendered clothes because normal clothes don't fit transgendered bodies as they transition. And that's who she modeled for. So she's now officially the youngest transgender model at New York Fashion Week. I do not know if she's the youngest at any fashion week, but of a major fashion weeks, she is the youngest, yes.
That's the absurdity that I think where the activists are overplaying their hand and they're pushing it just too damn far. We got billions of people in the world. Okay, there's always going to be some nuts, and some of those nuts are going to be parents, and some of those parents are going to influence their children into some ideologically extreme things. Kids are impressionable. They will do whatever their parents push them towards.
Yes.
Leave the kids alone. Once somebody's 18, if they want to identify as whatever the hell they please, by all means. But when you're when you're 4, when you're 7, when you're 10, just let them be kids.
Just because you don't want to wear a blue pair of pants when you're 2 years old does not mean you're the wrong gender. Or for that matter, 50% of kids right now of adults would probably be the opposite gender of what they were born with. Like, it's crazy. I mean, like, I got pink shirts. I got a pink golf shirt. I wear golfing. Does that mean I tee off from the ladies' tees? No. I still play from the men's tees, even though I'm wearing a pink shirt, but it doesn't mean I'm transitioning to a female. I just like the fact that it's a nice pink shirt to wear golfing, and we're at the point of where some of this just seems completely absurd to me. Just because a 2-year-old won't wear boys' clothes and they want to wear a pink pair of pants instead of blue does not mean you transition your child to another gender. I mean, we even had a term for it, tomboy. Girls who were, when they were younger, who were more into playing with trucks and stuff like that. That we had a term for it. It wasn't like it was a small group of 10 people over here in the corner that were the only ones doing that. There was a term for it. And all of them, most of them grew up and did not change their gender. And a lot of this is just parents are starting to fight back about this. We even see this in San Francisco, where they removed 3 school board trustees who were pushing a radical gender and CRT, critical race theory, into the schools, and they replaced them and put them in 3 conservative school board trustees in a recall. Who would have thought that San Francisco would be the place, recalling their liberal school trustees and replacing them with conservative school trustees. And we're seeing this come out in a bunch of other spots as well. And we're starting to even see some real pushback by parents to say, hey, teach my kids math, but when it comes to health stuff, that's a family thing. That's not something that you hide from us and take our kids away from us. because we don't agree with what you're telling our kids to do. And if you're 25 years old, you can have whatever plastic surgery you want to change yourself to look whatever way you want. But when you're 5 years old, or in the case of this kid, 2 to 4 years old, I mean, she was completely socially transitioned to a girl before she even got to kindergarten. That's where I think child services should actually be focusing their efforts, not on trying to find out who spoke to the Western Standard.
Yeah, it's a crazy world. Well, before I let you go, what are you working on? What do we got to look forward to, Chris?
I got a couple more stories on social services coming up. And also I have some excerpts from the Christian Schools Discipline Manual from back in the early 2000s that has been at the center of the recent controversy here in Saskatchewan, which now involves 3 separate Christian schools that have staff at them that were at the original Christian school where the abuse took place, including an exorcism, which didn't work. Surprise. Yeah. And so that's coming up as well. And I have actual excerpts from the actual discipline manual that they have. So
great. Well, thanks for checking in, Chris. It's been a slice. I'm sure I'll be seeing you again on other shows or something. And of course, I'm still going to be at the Standard, but this will be the last Triggered appearance. So I appreciate it. I appreciate that fine shirt. And I'm sure.
Yes, this was in honor of you, Cory.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Chris. And
in case anybody wonders why I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt, that's why. It's in honor of Cory. So I just want to clarify that. Thanks, Cory.
All right. Thanks, Chris. We'll talk again. So that is our Chris Oldcorn in Saskatchewan, as you see, covering those stories and sharing his opinions on a lot of things. So it's just some great stuff. He comes up with a lot of, original, unique, exclusive content. Just that other reminders you can see from Nico. Take out a subscription, guys. That's how we can beat them. This is how we can keep getting that newsprint going. Beyond that, I'm going to hit our last sponsor for the day, too, and that's the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. They've been sponsoring us for a long time, too. They help us stay on the air and in print, if you want to call it print nowadays. They are a good group. If you own a firearm, if you're looking to own a firearm, if you got friends who own firearms, if you support the rights of people to own firearms, you should be a member of the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. It's not that expensive at all. And it's well worth it. I mean, we've got a government that is, again, ideologically driven. They want to take away your property. They want to take away your ability to responsibly use firearms. As we saw, it's ridiculous. Trudeau is trying to shut down all handguns that have been owned harmlessly by people across this country for 100 years. And meanwhile, they're lightening up on sentencing for gangsters, for the illegal guns, for the smuggled guns. It's just bizarre world. If we don't stand up for ourselves, guys, we're going to lose. So you got to get on there, guys. Take out a membership. Join the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. This is how you can push back. This is how you organize. This is how you win. Check them out, cssa-cila.org, or just look up Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Okay, so speaking of the independent media, like I saw a comment there earlier from when I was talking to Chris from Jordan Cron saying, just leave Twitter. You realize you're saying the company's behavior and ethics are something you agree with every time you use the service. Well, no. It's saying I have to use it. Likewise, Jordan, I see your messaging from YouTube. And I don't think you necessarily agree with every bit of YouTube's censorship as well. But if you want to get to the larger productions and find things, unfortunately, for now anyway, these social media giants are the main ones doing it. We do stream to Rumble. And unfortunately, it doesn't integrate as well with some of our stuff. I can't see the comments from people on there. And I know there's some people watching on there, and I appreciate that. And we don't get kicked off Rumble all the time. But the amount of viewers that come in from Rumble are a fraction of what comes in on YouTube and Facebook. And being a publication, we need to get out to everyone else. I mean, the subscribers, that's how you can bypass it. Get on here, get straight to this stuff. But we need all of these platforms so people know where we are. It's not delivered on a doorstep any longer like an old newspaper. We have to use these social media giants, whether we like them or not. Twitter, for example. I mean, I've got, 30,000 followers on there. I can really amplify my stories, Western Standard stories, other things, just by tweeting them. I can get them out to a broader audience, share them, and get more viewers for the show, more readers for my columns, more readers for other stories I thought were interesting on the Standard or elsewhere. And Gab or Getter, and that they just don't provide nearly that reach. I'm hoping it changes. I'm hoping it evolves and it gets better. But for us, at least in alternative media, in independent media, it's just not an option to get away from these platforms yet. We'd like to, but we have to use them. It's a relationship that we got to maintain. And unfortunately, we get pushed around. I had so much high hope when Elon Musk was looking to shake up Twitter. And it's amazing when he was on the way in, how much Twitter already improved. It got better just knowing he was coming. And we saw old accounts being reinstated. I saw my follower growth start to grow. It had been flatlined forever because I'd been shadow banned like so many other conservative blue checks out there. And as soon as Musk's deal fell through, within a week, holy cow, they're banning all sorts of conservative commentators again. The growth in followers is flatlined again. It's frustrating. But at the same time, I can't get away from them yet. Hopefully we get there. The more the merrier. I want to see more social media things sprouting up. I mean, things evolve. Platforms come up that we never really would have thought about. I mean, whoever saw Twitter coming in the first place, or Facebook, it came from, MySpace originally. But, there's creative people who come up with different ways of getting these platforms out there and talking about things and such. So I know Twitter's frustrating, Facebook's frustrating, YouTube, but they're just essential for us with what we do, and we just can't escape them. Speaking of escaping mandatory, let's talk about a little media stuff. This is a story. CRTC, cable and satellite TV customers in Canada should be required to pay for gay programming, a CRTC commissioner said yesterday. A majority of regulators rejected mandatory carriage of the Out TV network of Vancouver, the world's first LGBTQ network. Somebody was quoted there basically saying, I would have made it mandatory. I would have forced it. It was one of their commissioners or something. Look, I don't have a problem with a LGBTQ network at all, but it shouldn't even be regulated. Just if there's enough people to watch it, just let it get out there. I mean, we don't control everything. Let it get on the channels. Let people buy a space on the digital network, whatever it might be, with Shaw or Rogers or any of those, or streaming. If the audience is there, good. Get out there and watch it. And you know what? Other stations or carriers or cable providers will happily, willingly pick it up. But when you want to force it, it's bad enough. Look, we got forced with all of our French programming out here in the West. How'd that work? Well, we don't speak French. We don't watch the shows. But other than that, it's working like a damn. Well, forcing this isn't going to help anybody either. If it's a good product, people are going to come out for it. So, the CRTC, the C11, C18, these things, the government really wants to empower what you can see, what you can hear. And this is another example of it with that attitude. I would force it. What do you mean you'd force it? So you'd force private companies to have to carry a particular channel, even if they don't want to. That's not right, guys. It's not right. It's bad enough we're forced with a damn CBC. Get rid of that thing. Get government out of it. Open it up. All right, what do we got here? This was a weird one. I mean, this is an interesting thing with social media. Speaking of which, the mob, the swarm, the lunatics, the people who lose it. And there's ones on the right and there's ones on the left. Cancel culture can hit all sides. It definitely can. People get heated. And the other thing that's dangerous on social media is rumors. Rumors have always been able to spread like wildfire and cause problems in communities and neighborhoods and groups of people. Social media has amplified that. So this was a deal out in Orlando, Florida. And a woman who owned a beauty or a aesthetics parlor or whatever, hairstylist, suddenly her phone's ringing off the hook, and she got 700 phone calls from strangers screaming at her, yelling at her, calling her a racist, calling her every name in the book, threatening her business, giving 1 stars to her business, all sorts of things. She didn't know what the hell's going on. Not to mention, by the way, she's black. So what the hell's going on here? Well, it turns out somebody had gone on a racist tirade at a business a block away and screaming and hollering and abusing a person of Chinese descent. And it went viral on the internet and videos. And somebody had determined that this woman's hairstyling business is where it had come from. They determined it was her who did it. And they were wrong. They were totally wrong. But unfortunately, the rumor had already spread. And now we've got hundreds and thousands of social media self-declared basically vigilantes going after this poor woman and, harassing her business and putting her through all of this. And she was completely innocent. So I just want to talk about some of those things with social media. It's such a great development, such a great tool. But like everything else, we've got a real good capacity as humanity to screw it up. So just be careful. There's one of those things we deal with on the social media too. We get a lot of BS that goes around. It's incumbent on, I don't want the government to control content. I don't want them to say what's right, what's wrong, hinder conversation, limit it. But that means we have to take some responsibility. Think twice before acting. If you see something seems questionable, look into it. Before you go attacking a business because you saw an internet rumor, make sure it really was that business or that person. Because paradoxically saying, are there more idiots or are they just concentrated on social media? I think there's the same amount of idiots. They just didn't have the means to organize and move as a herd so effectively now, back then as they do today. Now the idiots really have a whole new platform to be able to spread out there and share their idiocy with us all, whether we like it or not. And Jordan Cronigan says, see, people nowadays get enraged on social media. They do. People work themselves up too much. And he says it's a vocal minority. It is. But when you're talking in volumes of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of people, think of some of those social media heavyweights. I mean, think of some of those ones that are TikTok influencers who have literally millions of followers, millions. This is a person, some vacuous twit who dances around with their jugs bouncing all over the place, and they've got themselves millions of mob-like, cult-like followers. And this person isn't all that sharp, however. And if they want to point and say, hey, everybody, go get that guy, their crazed followers are going to go get that guy. It's a scary power to have. I don't want to see it controlled. I'm just saying, hey, we're just going to have to take the good with the bad when it comes to open communication, social media, and the internet. So, just kind of my warning to everybody as I'm moving along with the last episode of Triggered here, that people have to take care on social media at times. Here's an interesting one. Dave mentioned that one. 31% of people fear radio waves. A third of people are concerned of the health effects from cell phones, Wi-Fi, smart meters, and other. Okay, I'm sorry you're scared, I guess is all I can say. If you look up some old stories, there were people who were anti-television. There were people who were anti-radio, anti-electricity. They were terrified of those developments 100 years ago, 140 years ago, 80 years ago, whatever these different developments came along. I think... I've heard of some seniors who used to think that, the people on TV could actually look back and watch you. I mean, it only made sense if you were there when TVs were first invented. Well, if I could see them, how can they not see me? And likewise, we get some people, if you don't understand it, it sounds scary. So yes, these radio waves are moving around all over the place, and how can it not be hurting me? Well, the radio waves occur naturally, even they're coming from outer space. As Jack Gorgon says, yeah, they're Luddites, but they do exist. And hey, the fear is real. I mean, if 30% of the people are scared, then I guess we should work on comforting them. I couldn't imagine how bad it would be to be afraid of those when you can't walk without coming near a router or seeing a cell tower or things like that going around. And a lot of that came about because of misinformation in the past. There was the anti-smart meter movement with people, and really that movement wasn't based on safety. That was based on some people opposed to just checking on gas and things from a distance. And you get to Elizabeth May, Crazy Liz, and she is crazy. She was anti-Wi-Fi. She was saying Wi-Fi hurts people. There's no basis to it or anything else, but she was spreading that baloney. And her followers were believing it. I think of Better Call Saul. If people saw that spin-off from Breaking Bad, Michael McKean was, living in a house terrified of every possible wave. Toilet Wand Andy saying some people are sensitive to them. Perhaps it really exists. I don't know. In that show, it was found to be kind of psychosomatic, and he was just crazy. But realistically, for 99% of the world, it doesn't hurt us. 30% of the people are worried, but they're worrying over something that they really shouldn't. We got a lot of bigger things to worry about. That's for sure. And sweating, radio signals and things like that isn't one of the bigger concerns, at least not for me. Here's a concern. Here's something to be worried about. Business debts are averaging $158,000. Now, with big business, that's not necessarily a big deal, but small business owners, and that's what this was from, was the CFIB, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, was talking about all these small businesses having six-figure debts, which when you're a small business, that's a hell of a lot to carry when you're in there. So we got to worry about things. Cheryl's wondering if I'm wearing pants. No, because I don't. Oh, shit.
You want to? You want to?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Don't cut the cord.
Oh, yeah, careful. I got a mic. All right. Well,
Last time you're going to be wearing a tie, Cory.
Yeah. Oh, there goes the green screen, and the tie is gone.
Well, there. I'm glad we didn't cut the cord.
Well, yeah. I got my short tie. We're making a new fashion statement with Hawaiian shirts and chopped ties. Well, shit.
Just wanted to congratulate you on your last show. And well done. We'll give you a nice polite round of golf clap.
Well, thanks. So here, this is the Western Standard team in here for the final episode and the tie chopping and the Hawaiian shirts. No, that grows way too slowly now. And I already manscaped this morning. I told people about that already. Well, thank you. And thanks for coming in on the final episode of Triggered. Do you want to come around and say hi once, Nico? I mean, I reference you all the time and nobody ever gets to see who this is. He's got the best shirt of them all anyways. And there's Nico, the man who manages to make me look reasonably pretty around here. And we got Jeff over there.
Come on, Jeff, you want to come in?
Yeah, get in here. We got Jeff. And he's not
sure how his shirt will deal with
well, we don't have a green screen on now anyways, and Jeff's often got a big green screen on the go there. So, well, thank you all guys for coming in. And this has been the team and support, which is why we've pulled off this show this long, the good news, the good effort from everybody, even if they're anti-tie more than I would have ever imagined. So, okay, I'm not sure what else I can say at this point.
Well, you'll be missed.
All
sure.
right. All right, well,
What do is sign off for the last time.
I guess we'll sign off with the bunch here. This is the end. I usually tell you when to tune in for the next show, but there's not going to be one. There's going to be a lot more productions coming out of the Western Standard, though, in the months and years to come, and I'll be involved in some of them for sure. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going somewhere different. So thank you all for tuning in, guys. You're a great bunch, and I will see you online elsewhere.
Say it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. All right.
We'll probably play some music. For the guy who wants it.
I'm going to wear a shittier tie.